A writer once said that there are three things that are too amazing for him, four that he didn't quite understand. One was the way of an eagle in the sky, the other, the way of a snake on a rock, another, the way of a ship on the high seas, and lastly, the way of a man with a young woman. And just as these mysteries capture our curiosity, so too does the process of aging. We all have our perceptions, but there is also the realities. We are often filled with the fears and the stigmas that society has attached to the aging process. But today, we are going to shift your perspective from misconception to reality. Join me as we navigate these waters together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Level Up Director podcast. I am your Level Up Director transformational coach, Coach G, and today we are getting back into the swing of things. We are continuing our series on aging and doing it gracefully. And in today's episode, I want to talk about embracing the change beyond what you see, give you a different perspective on how to use this new beginning of your life to recalibrate and reinvent yourself. When we think about aging, many of us picture gray hair and a few wrinkles. You might notice some weight retention due to metabolic changes or experience some new aches in areas you didn't even know existed. But this happens to the best of us, even to those who work out regularly. And while these physical changes are common, they don't define the aging experience. There's so much more to it. Aging reaches far beyond the physical and it finds a way into our psyche. For instance, the first time you were carded, there was this liberation that you felt. It was like, yes, I have arrived. And you went from being this teenager who couldn't get a driver's license without your parents' permission to now being this young adult with freedoms you've never experienced before. And every time thereafter, there was this sense of power that you felt over your life. And so you went out, you partied, you went out with your friends, where you had to show proof of age. That was pretty exhilarating, right? But then one morning you wake up to a shift that seemed to have come straight out of nowhere. But it's been approaching all along. You were just living your life and being too busy doing all the things that most people in their 20s and their 30s do. But one day you wake up and you go out with your friends as usual, or you buy a drink, or maybe even a round for your friends. This time nobody cards you. That curiousness about how young you are, if your legal disappears. No one asks you for your ID anymore. You start to notice that the youthful look has started to dissipate. All of a sudden you start noticing, hmm, I can buy products and go into certain spaces and no one asks me any questions. No one is asking for proof of age. The thought of not being carded any longer isn't a big deal initially, but it becomes more prevalent in your mind as time goes by. Eventually, things begin to feel different. And you start paying more attention to those birthdays as the numbers keep rising: 38, 39, 40. That's when many of you began to take pause and the questions start flooding in. You start feeling the regrets of certain decisions you made in your younger years. You ruminate over them in your mind. And eventually, no one no longer cards you, and it becomes this solid identifier of aging that many times trigger deeper questions. Questions that shift your focus from building this outward identity that you've been doing for years to now evaluating your past life choices, your unrealized dreams, which ultimately, for some, unfortunately, does bring up regrets. So, in our younger years, many of us rarely consider time or thought about death and dying the way we do when we reach our midlife. And as we grow older, we become acutely aware of our mortality, and it takes on a more tangible form. We begin to understand that life is not an endless phenomenon, but instead It's a finite journey. And one day we may find ourselves sitting on a park bench or in a coffee shop or on the couch at home, evaluating our lives. What have we accomplished? How will we be remembered? Will we even be remembered at all? Listen, I'm not trying to sound all doom and gloom, but what I do want you to understand is that this is all a normal process. During those early years, all we really focused on was hanging out with friends, building careers, traveling, and trying to be successful in this world. But once you hit those 40s and beyond, a natural shift happens in what you value, how you see life, and what matters most. So don't think anything is wrong with you. At least nothing is wrong with you, uh, unless it becomes overwhelming. And when it gets to that point, that's when you want to start asking yourself some questions that I believe can hopefully help you make sense of all the insanity. Some of the questions that you can ask yourself is, when you're feeling overwhelmed, what specifically are you feeling heavy about in that moment? And we'll use a career, for instance. Say you were considering a career switch, but you were feeling hesitant or maybe even anxious about leaving because you believe where you currently are is secure. Do you worry that you might be perceived as too old to be hired? That's a valid emotion. But is what you're feeling grounded in reality? That's the question you will need to answer. Another question is, what meaning are you attaching to the feelings you're having in that moment? And this is when you take the time to really reflect on what you're feeling and what's actually coming up for you. If you're feeling anxious, is it because you're doubting yourself and your abilities, or is it just a natural response to trying something new? It's important that we understand the meaning that we attach to how we're feeling, because this weirdness, if you will, can significantly influence how you respond to what you feel. In this way, you can validate what you feel, and if necessary, reframe those feelings in a way that empowers you, not paralyzes you. Another question you can ask yourself is is what you're feeling grounded in reality? I find that this helps a lot when those thoughts bring up certain types of fears. This is when you need to stop and take a pause, because as we age, it's common to feel anxiety about whether your job will still be there, especially with the advancements we see in AI. That's a tangible reason when thinking about career changes come into play. And as we age into our 40s and beyond, it's no easy feat to see younger individuals being chosen because of their youth instead of experience, causing us to sometimes question our own relevance in the job market and worry about perceived thoughts of, are we too old? Is our skills too antiquated? I recently had an experience that made me question my value as an older woman in the workforce. I felt sidelined and devalued, but I had to ask myself if all the thoughts I was having were valid, if it was me or just an executive decision based off a specific need rather than my abilities. After having the opportunity to gather more information, I realized that my perception of my abilities and my age had nothing to do with the actual dynamics that were at play. And I discovered that the decisions made by management was driven more by the company's strategic needs rather than any real shortcomings on my part. And this knowing, if you will, it allowed me to see that my feelings of being sidelined were more about my own insecurities than a true reflection of my value. And I reminded myself that my ability to learn, my skills, and my knowledge were still relevant and very valuable. This situation became an awakening for me, a chance to reassess my contributions and reaffirm my worth in this ever changing landscape of business. So, in facing times like these and others, you have to make a commitment to affirm your relevance, and honor your worth. It's important for you to not just recognize, but to also understand the why behind your emotions. When you can pinpoint your why, you can better manage your emotions around those circumstances or those situations. And so there has been individuals that I've coached that for all the wrong reasons, they measured their success against their peers and even family members, which only added to their unnecessary emotional weight. What you need to remember is that all of our stories are different. Our upbringing, the families that we were raised in or not, they all shape us and landed us where we are. And the places where we landed became unique to us. Now you have to come to a stage in your life where your experiences have positioned you to start making choices based on what aligns with your spirit, what's right for you now and moving forward. If that looks like changing careers at 55, that's your choice to make. If you are at a point in your life where you want to quit your job and travel, you have the autonomy to do that. This is the time in your life when you don't need a committee to validate your direction. At one point in my life, I became so obsessed with creating this new image, if you will. My children were being successful doing things that I only dreamed about doing when I was their age. And I began to feel like a failure. I felt like I had to prove my worth because I didn't take the time to process my thoughts and really add up all my accomplishments. I got into so much debt trying to fill those empty spaces. I thought to do all of these things would help me to tap into this validation I thought I needed from my children and other people. But after quietly and with intentionality, sitting with all those thoughts that flooded my mind, I was able to shift my perspective by reevaluating my why. By reevaluating my why, it brought me to a place where I stopped trying to impress people. I started realizing that people who I thought I needed to impress could care less about whether I failed or succeeded because they were too busy living life with all its challenges for themselves. At this stage in your life, it's time to stop trying to impress people and start living your life to its fullest, whatever that looks like for you. Living autonomously after 40 isn't about proving who you are or your independence. At this stage in your life, it's okay for you to make decisions that encompasses who you choose to be going forward. And as you age, I want you to start embracing your individual journeys. Pat yourself on the back and acknowledge and celebrate your own progress. Stop comparing your accomplishments to everybody else. Focus on your goals, your growth. That's where true fulfillment lies. We have the opportunity to evaluate our lived experiences critically, to sift through all the noise, to see our choices, dreams, and even regrets, to see how all of those things have grown us and made us wiser. This is not a journey of doom and gloom. It's a journey to greater emotional awareness and understanding of who you are. And by asking yourself the difficult questions, identifying the why behind your feelings, you empower yourself to navigate these transitions with grace. So embrace the changes beyond the mirror. Celebrate who you are now. Aging can be a beautiful opportunity for you to reinvent yourself in ways you never thought possible. Yes, we may notice those gray strands and wrinkles, but beneath the surface lies a wealth of introspection and transformation. The first time you were carded brought a surge of liberation, a feeling of power over your life. As we age, that sense of being asked for proof of our youth fades, triggering a wave of existential questions. What if you cheat? How will you be remembered? Will you be remembered? It's all a normal process when we come face to face with midlife. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have gleaned something from what we've talked about today, that you will find value in it. Because as you change your perspective, you consequently transform your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment. The algorithms like that, and I can reach more beautiful queens. And until next time, remember, age is just a number, but the value you bring to this world is priceless.